My name is Lacey Squire. I manage Boundary Waters Connect. Boundary Waters Connect has been working with a committee of local nonprofit leaders and business owners and active community members to facilitate this Ely for Ely effort, in which we put our work hats on and think about how we can work together to greater positive impact. It's kind of a nebulous process, and where we're at in the process right now is this like information collecting, inviting people to the table, getting the lay of the land. And again, it's kind of nebulous, but our goal is that we could, work collaboratively with a lot of people to facilitate and foster a positive vision and like a strategy for how we can help Ely be better in lots of ways. I want to give a shout out to Palm and Pine and Justine of Palm and Pine. So thank you. Yeah. I had the sincere pleasure of sampling a couple different flavors of overnight oats and was really appreciative of that product. So those are available, and then some samples of the smoothies as well as some fruits and some coffee. So just know that you can go to Palm and Pine and get individual products for yourselves or get catering for an event. This is the second of 3 meetings on a track of business succession. This whole year, we've been collaborating with University of Minnesota Extension, and that is why we're very fortunate to have John Bennet and Aiden Opatz with us today. Thank you, John and Aiden.
Thank you.
And with that, I think I'm just going to give the microphone over to John and Aiden and let them facilitate for us. This, I guess I'll just remind people, this is an extended session. So typically our meetings go until 9, and this session is scheduled to go until 10. Challenge by choice. You do what you need to do. If you have to leave, you are empowered to do that. But this program will go until 10 a.m. Thank you very much, John.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lacey. I appreciate it. I'm going to get moving here. Again, yeah, my name is John Bennet. I've probably met most of you or many of you. I'm told I should be sticking behind the podium here so the people on Zoom can see me. And I will likely leave because I will forget. And I am positive I'm going to trip over this cord over here at least one time. No, you're all good. You don't, or is it? Okay, I'll still probably trip over it, but that's okay. Again, my name is John Bennet, and I'm here with my colleague Aiden Opatz, and I'll ask him to introduce himself in a second. But we're both with the University of Minnesota Extension, with the Department of Community Development, and we are here for this workshop here today. And it is going to be a little interactive. There's going to be a lot of data and a lot of kind of talking at you about some stuff. And so last month when I was here, I promised that we would change our conversation, or what we were talking about, from conversation mostly to this time actually bringing in some data to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. And I'm going to go back to, and then hopefully next month or in the coming months, we'll take it to the next step and think about, how do we want to take some of these ideas that we've talked about and some of the data that we've seen, and maybe think about putting it to doing some work and kind of getting some action grounded. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. But the university is very pleased and honored to be part of your group over these 12 months here working on this educational series. I commend you all for being here. There has to be more than 40 people in the room. And for someone like me who's been, yes, you should give yourself a round of applause. 40 people at 8 in the morning that's tough to do. I've been doing this for a long time, and this doesn't happen. And so I hope you realize how special this is to have people show up. you know, what the kind of work that I do, which is community development and thinking about your economy, doesn't happen because of reports that I do or Aiden works on. Things happen because people show up and they start to get their hands dirty and getting involved, and over time, those all those educational opportunities, conversations and discussions that you have, learning about your community, you're going to be much better suited to actually take action that's impactful and effective. So here you can see the calendar we've got coming up here for the coming months. But today we're going to be talking about what's happening in Ely's economy and some data that we have to sort of help illustrate what's going on. Again, I'm John. Aiden, my colleague, is on the screen here, and Aiden is in Northfield, Minnesota, and he wanted to be up here today, but I think he's got another meeting down there later today, so I'm glad he's here. But Aiden is great. He's Aiden, how long have you been with us here so far now?
I'm approaching 2 years.
2 years. Okay, let's see. You're a little loud, but that's not you. We're
Okay.
gonna we're approaching 2 years. He's brilliant. He came straight to us out of the Department of Applied Economics, and a brilliant guy, and also Ely has a special place that's close to his heart as well. He used to do a lot of work up here as a camp counselor at Aiden. Remind me the camp that you were at again.
I worked at Camp de Nord.
Camp de Nord. So, and how many summers did you do that, Aiden?
4 summers, then 1 full year.
4 summers and 1 full year. So Aiden has told me before that he loves Ely, and anytime I'm doing something up here, he wants in. So that's good for you guys. That's good for you guys because he's good stuff. Thanks for being here, Aiden. And sorry, let's see. Here we go. Okay. So today we have a tall order here for the goals, and I think we'll probably get through at least the first half. But after the end of this session, I'm hoping that we can gain a clearer understanding of the trends that are shaping the Ely economy. We're going to be looking at some pretty interesting data about visitor patterns, customer behavior, and workforce movement that I think should be useful to you and helping make local decisions. And then, if we get to it, we're going to be moving into understanding the connection between business retention and long-term business succession and how we might be able to actually use some of this data to work on those issues. We're going to be hopefully talking about opportunities for Ely to better support existing businesses, and also what an effort like this might look like. Just this is what my department, which is one of 4 departments within Extension, has 3 different parts to it. We're the home to the university's tourism center. We have a group of folks who do work in leadership and civic engagement, and then community economics. And I have the arrow there because that's what Aiden and I do, but we have a big department, and we have folks who have expertise in a number of different areas, all of which are pertinent to you folks. I know earlier in the year we had done some work on leadership development, and I think we'd like to think about talking to you about doing some more of that down the road as well as you guys are ready and or interested. So today we're mostly going to be talking about community economics, and so there's going to be a lot of numbers here. So bear with us, while you can. It's going to move beyond that. So community and economic development, why do we do this? We think that this is important, and these educational opportunities are important because by having a better understanding of what the makeup of your local economy and what that looks like, you can change the economic situation for yourself, your family, your community, and your region. And that's important to think about. You guys are here because you probably want to help contribute to your local economy in some ways and make that better. But a lot of the information you might learn might become useful to you personally and thinking about your plans for the future and identify maybe even potential entrepreneurial opportunities that you haven't thought of. And it's a way to think about learning from history to move towards the future, because times change, places change, people that live in places change, and the local decisions that we make need to reflect that as well. So I'm going to start by just doing an overview of the Ely economy. This was work that we did about a year ago. We were asked by the Ely Chamber of Commerce to kind of come up with some numbers to just tell a little bit about who's living and working around Ely, and so that's what I'm going to get into here. So a little bit with the economic overview, employment trends. Since 2001, there has been a dip in employment. As you can see, 2001 it was about 4,630 jobs in the area. There was quite a bit of a dip, as there was in the rest of the state during the Great Recession around 2008. And then, of course, we know what happened around 2019 with COVID numbers. But the good news is that you guys are stabilizing again, about close to the level that you were at pre-pandemic. And I'm also going to say that if you have any questions that come up with these numbers, feel free to either raise your hand or just shout it out, or let me know if you want to go deeper on any one of these things. Yes. We've got a lot of statistics here for job numbers that I get into. If your question's not answered after that, then we can revisit it. A lot of the data, yes, question. Full-time a full-time equivalent. I know you guys do have a lot of part-time jobs here too. One thing I'll also say is I was going to say this a little bit later. Everything that we're going to be looking at is the Ely economy minus mining. We don't have information about mining jobs the way that this works. In order for that data to be disclosed by the government, we need at least 4 different types of businesses in a category in order for them to disclose it. Otherwise, they do that because they don't want you to be able to identify numbers for a particular business. So we don't have, one sec, Becky, we don't have data for mining that doesn't, and those jobs. That doesn't mean that we can't include it. It just would mean that we would need to get that data from those companies themselves. And so anyway, we'd be happy to incorporate it if there was a want or a need for that, but the data that I'm going to be talking about does not include mining. I had 2 questions. Becky. This includes Babbitt, Ely, Sudan, and Tower zip codes. And so a lot of the data that we're going to be looking at is sort of sliced and diced in different ways. And it's not always the same jurisdiction that we're going to be looking at. I'll do my best job, or the best job that I can, to sort of let you know the scope or the geography that we're talking about. But some is county-wide data, some is county-wide data that excludes Duluth, some is local to Ely, some includes Ely and the surrounding townships. It's kind of a big hot mess here, and it's not my fault. You guys are the ones who are located on the county line, so I'm just doing the best that I can, but it certainly does make my job harder. But when you live in St. Louis County and you work with data, you get used to that because Duluth always throws our numbers off. I had another question back here. We're good to go? Aiden, just so you know, there's over 40 people here today. So not to make you nervous at all, Aiden, but you've got a crowd, but most of them are smiling. So I think that's a good sign. So here's the percent change in jobs. This data is coming from Lightcast, and this is a percent change of jobs from 2010 to 2023. And you can see Ely lost about 4.2% of its jobs, while other places on the range gained closer to 8, and Duluth lost close to 1. I'd say this is just data. This doesn't. This is not a bad thing. This doesn't, and it does not surprise me at all. You guys are at the end of the road, and this does not surprise me at all. Nor do I think it's something you should be too concerned about. This is just this is data for number of people in the labor force in St. Louis County, and excluding Duluth. And so this is only sort of helpful, but just so you know, like what the workforce looks like and how it's been changing in Northeast Minnesota, or at least in St. Louis County. This is what it looks like when you take out Duluth. So you can see there has been a dip in the labor force, and you guys might have some better ideas as to why that might be. I have a couple of ideas of my own. But yeah, you can see there is quite a bit of a drop from 2010 to 2023, just in terms of the number of people that are participating in the labor force. I think a lot of these were like when COVID hit, there were some folks that just decided to retire and drop out of the economy. Or at the same time, what's happening is that you guys are getting older, and people are just retiring. Yes, question. I believe this is just full-time jobs. Aiden, I'm going to ask you to unmute. We had a question, is that when we're looking at number of jobs here, we're just talking about full-time equivalent jobs. If you hear me say anything incorrect, feel free to jump in. But
yeah, I believe that is the case for deed information. It's full-time equivalent jobs.
Full-time equivalent jobs. That's right. Thank you. And so, yeah, that could be for any number of different reasons why that number is going down. Probably had something to do with COVID. It also has to do with the folks in Northeast Minnesota are getting older, and in Ely, you guys are getting older. You have fewer people who are under 65 and more people who are over 65. And again, that's not too surprising for a smaller town or a city in a more rural location, especially one that's a bit tucked away and a bit isolated. Here's the change of number of jobs by industry for Ely and the surrounding townships and zip codes here. And so as this is in 2023, most of your jobs are in leisure and hospitality and trade. And again, here towards the bottom, you'll see utilities and mining. And of course, we know that there are a lot of folks who work in the mining sector here. We're just not able to account for them in this data. And I need to get my phone out so I can make sure I'm not taking up Aiden's time here. Here's the change in number of jobs by industry from 2010 to 2023. You can see healthcare has taken off, and manufacturing. I have to ask you guys, I was wondering about this, what happened in manufacturing up here between 2010 and 2023? Sorry? Outdoor gear? That's a manufacturer up here that started? Okay, so it's not just one place. You've had a multi that. Well, that's a really good sign. So you know, we're used to and we expect to see healthcare and education up there pretty high, but manufacturing, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. You have seen a dip in leisure and hospitality and professional and business services. So something changed. Maybe it was the first recession, or maybe it was COVID. Some of those jobs went away and didn't necessarily come back. The interesting thing about that, though, is that when you look at you didn't really see a change in the number of establishments over that same period of time. And so something that I thought was interesting is that the businesses that are here are, you still have the same, roughly the same number of businesses, but you've lost quite a few jobs, which means productivity is improving. Business owners are maybe getting smarter, thinking about how they can do more with less. I'm not really sure. You guys probably have a better answer to or idea as to why that might be than I would. But you have seen a decrease in leisure and hospitality jobs and professional and business services. This is a location quotient, and it's only somewhat useful, something they sort of teach us in graduate school. And basically, it just a location quotient of 1 or more means that you have a concentration of that type of industry in your region, more than you might be expected to have. And if you have a location quotient less than 1, that just means that you're not doing as well, or you're not performing as well as you might be expected to perform. But in my own opinion, Aiden's might be a little bit differently. This is less useful in smaller locations. This is a type of analysis that I find more useful in bigger places, like if we were doing it for all of St. Louis County or Duluth. But just another snapshot as to what jobs and employment in the industries look like in the Ely area.
Yeah, I would agree. Smaller locations should not expect to be generalists in everything. It benefits smaller locations to specialize in a few industries, and so this is what I would expect from a smaller location.
Thank you, Aiden. Yes, question. You would expect that number to increase again. We did this analysis about a year ago, and so the data that we have is well, 2000. Some of it's 2023 or 24, but if we did this a year from now, you might expect that number's going to be going up again. Good. Part of the reason why it is important to ask for these types of reports and analysis on occasion is so you can have benchmarks and you can kind of see what you're doing. And a lot of this stuff you guys already know because you live and work here. People like me only know because I'm looking at data behind my computer screen. Yes.
And is it counting, like I'm thinking about professional and business services, like the ones that are, or trade, the ones that don't have like a brick and mortar, like are those counted in here? What does that look like?
I'm gonna punt. Aiden, did you hear that question? Can you talk a little bit about Lightcast data and how it's collected?
Yes, so from my understanding, and I haven't used Lightcast in a little bit now, but from my understanding, it is based off of where the business files their taxes. So, um, it should be counted if you don't have a physical location, as long as you are filing your taxes in that area.
Thank you. Did you? Oh, that's better. Oh, okay. Your voice sounded a little funky there, Aiden, but it wasn't you. We were messing with your volume while you were talking, so it was pretty interesting on this end. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, wage trends. Here's what it looks like from 2001 to 2023. The line on the bottom is Ely, and the yellow is Minnesota as a whole. So wages in Ely are paying less than the state as a whole. We do know that a lot of the jobs that you have are in the tourism industry, and sometimes sometimes that's the case. Here's the average weekly wage by industry in Ely, and you can kind of see what that looks like. You have a lot of jobs here that are in education and health services, and again, professional and business services that are higher paying jobs. So it's going to be a good thing for wages if these professional and business services do start coming back to the numbers that they were at before. But again, these are just economic numbers that doesn't, don't, they're not bad, and you're certainly not far off course from where we might expect you to be at.
Minnesota, it includes all the metropolitan areas as well.
Includes the metropolitan areas as well.
It's
That's right. It's very, again, we slice and dice this data, and so the unit of analysis is always a little bit different. When we're looking at wages, we're comparing Ely to the metro area and folks who live there as well. And we know that those jobs just pay a lot more money, and that's the way that it goes. Here's average weekly wage compared to the average of 10 similarly sized cities in Minnesota, and you can see Ely is a little bit lower there as well. But again, you guys are sort of at the end of the road. A lot of the other, I do have a list of all the other cities that are on here, but I'm not going to read them to you. I'd have to look them up. I can show you them later. We also have, this report is also available online, so if you do want to read it again after hearing some of it or much of it here today, you're certainly able to do that. Again, a little bit lower than the state average for similarly sized towns, but that's where you're at. This is pretty interesting. Has anyone ever seen what a work shed flow looks like here for the Ely area? Well, what this map sort of says here is that you have 400 people that are both living and working in Ely. You have 678 people who are driving into Ely to go to work every day, and you have 430 people that are leaving Ely to go to work every day. Does this surprise anyone? No? Go ahead, Becky. That's right.
And there are jobs in those townships. There are people in those townships. Is your data, does it include any of that township activity as far as wages, jobs, or is it just within the city limits of Ely? And I ask because I think we think about I live in the township of Morse. I wouldn't count, right? Even though I consider myself an Ely resident. Right?
If you were to think about the Ely community as beyond the jurisdictional boundaries, yes, it would look bigger. This is for the boundaries of Ely. Aiden, how does this work with Deed? Can we crunch these numbers by including townships by a bigger location, or are we stuck to doing it with just the Ely jurisdictional lines?
I believe we can crunch the numbers using the Ely Township. What we would have to look at is I don't know if they have an ability to combine it in their software, but we could look at the township and look at Ely separately and then combine the two numbers and average them based off of population. And so there is ways to do that.
So it's a great question, and these are the kinds of things, if you don't mind, hopefully we're recording this, right? But these are great questions, and if you want us to think of like if that data would be useful, it's possible for us to do it. That's not typically how we would do it, which is why we didn't do it here. But yes, it sounds like there might be a way to do that. But you guys have people coming and going. You have a lot of people that are coming into Ely to to work, and when they're here, they shop here. Yeah, you're not losing as many as you're gaining, and I think that's a good thing. Jess.
That I live in the town of Morse, just on the other side of the city limits, and I work at Dorothy Moulter, which is in city limits, so I would be considered a commuter coming in. Virginia lives within city limits and works at the Wolf Center, which is just outside of city limits in Morse County. So so she goes out, commutes out. So it's like sometimes the data, like you have to look at those little nuances that like we kind of cancel each other out, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that fit that too.
Both of us are having what, 5-minute commutes or less?
Yeah.
5 minute.
But technically we're both commuters by this, but we're about 5-minute commutes.
To you guys, with where you choose to live and work, you realize you just make economist's job harder to track where you're going.
I do want to reiterate the full study is available. I have a printed copy at my office, and there's a digital version that we can send out with a follow-up email.
There's a digital version, and we're also happy to, again, we can enhance this report with questions like Becky had here too. David.
Middle of everywhere, right? So the whole point of showing this is that people are coming from distances that we, are somewhat unpredictable, but you shouldn't focus on the city of Ely as the sole data point. It's a lot has.
That's right. If you were to look at this map 30 to 40 years ago, this number right here would be, of people who live and work in Ely, would be much higher. But things have changed. Vehicles have changed. Like we get better gas mileage than we used to. At least some vehicles, not mine. But we get some better. And yeah, people are used to driving further to work than what they used to, and so that's very normal. Another question back here.
Just quickly, where does remote work fall in?
Aiden, how do we account for remote work in these? Would they be counted in the people who live and work here?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to take a look at the methodology again for commuting patterns. I can't say off the top of my head.
Thank you. Yes.
Commute times, that would improve what we would know about the area and be able to compare that with other areas, because the drive time could be a significant difference from area to area.
It certainly could, and some of that stuff we can now measure now, and so yes, it could, that could change things, and anything's possible if we know what we're doing, or if we not if we know, or I mean,
what you want to ask, yeah.
If we know what you want, what kind of questions you want to answer, we can look at the data in that way. Maybe the way that we're doing it here is how we would typically do this in a report, and so every place the geography is a little bit different. And Ely is no different. In order to do a good economic analysis, it takes a lot of time and a lot of groundwork. The biggest part of this work is ground truthing, which is a big part of what I do, and sort of testing out, like making sure that some of these actually make sense with what resonates at home with folks and what makes sense. So, good question. We thought we'd just dive a little deeper into leisure and hospitality, because narrow in a little more about what these numbers look like. Change of number of establishments from 2010 to 23. You can see you had a boom in accommodations. Quite a big boom. Were there new lodging facilities that were were built or during that period of time. I know the Ely Lodge was built before 2000, or the Grand Ely Lodge was built before then, but you guys certainly have been growing. Short-term rentals. Oh, well, that makes me less excited. But well, that certainly makes that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and that really does make me less excited. But I'm glad that the outfitters are doing. Short-term rentals are like, that's a whole other issue that we're dealing with, and my own neighborhood in Duluth, for example. Oops, sorry, every time I do something here. Sorry? Let's see, change in establishments from 2020. Well, sorry. Aiden, what are can you read this slide? Can you read this slide for me that we're on here, and the colors? The color.
It looks like the maroon is employment and the yellow is establishments.
Employment and establishments. Thank you. Thank you. Good question. Again, here's 2010 to 2019 change in employment establishment. So this would have been right up through COVID. And change in employment, or this is actually COVID, 2019 to 2020. So you can see where, sorry, this is a Mac and I'm not used to it. I'm a little trigger happy here. Change in employment from 2019 to 2020. Here's where a lot of those losses came, but as we saw earlier, many of them came back again from 2020 to 2023. So hopefully, maybe a few more years, we'll kind of get back on track to where we were before. So again, we've got this whole report that is available for you to look at online. This is just general sort of economic overview, who's working here, what the jobs look like, the number of businesses. And pretty soon I'm going to hand it over to Aiden here. Aiden, sorry, I'm eating. You can still have as much time as you want, but I do want you to take just a couple of minutes. If you have a pen, turn to the neighbor sitting next to you and talk about what stands out. Does anything concern you, and what surprises you? And we'll take just a couple of minutes to talk about that. Primarily, not just because we want to find out what's interesting, but because we want to find out what questions have we not answered here that would be useful for us to start thinking about and working on, maybe even for next month. I'm not going to make any promises on that, but yeah, feel free to just maybe work at the table that you're at and have a conversation for a few minutes. Okay, I think I'm going to reconvene us here because we haven't even gotten to the best part yet. But I just want to take a minute or two and find out what were folks talking about, what stands out, what concerns you, and what surprises you with the data and the information that we were just talking about. Virginia.
I know. Well, I'm going to bring it over here quick.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Wigdahl has an important point to make.
Thank you.
I just wanted to remind you, John, you keep referring to us as being at the end of the road or tucked away. We are the center of the universe. We're waiting for the world to figure that out, okay?
Thank you.
An important point to make.
Fair point. Sorry, I will not refer to you as the end of the road.
You look good.
Sometimes in my world, people, I live in Duluth and people call me the end of the road. And I said, well, you haven't been to Ely yet. I apologize. And fair point. That doesn't, a big thing of what you should be thinking about is your narrative. And if that does not help your narrative, yeah, we shouldn't say it. And I won't say it anymore. So thank you.
All right. I want to completely acknowledge that it makes sense that you all didn't go after the mining information if it was really complicated, but it is a really tricky thing to talk about up here. It's one of our most partisan issues. And so by not having mining represented at this business meeting, I think it kind of shifts the conversation in a way that's not necessarily respectful to a lot of the people who moved here for mining and continue to earn their income through mining. And I completely understand why it was really tricky, but I just want to acknowledge to the group as well that like we can't forget about mining here at this business meeting.
We would love to incorporate data from the mining companies into this. And it's not that we didn't, or no, I didn't. In order to get that, because the data is not disclosed, that would mean it would need to come voluntarily from the companies themselves. And we would gladly do that if they were willing to share the data. Yes.
One of the things that comes to mind for me too is particularly during COVID, we had a lot of people who are technically employed elsewhere, but yet came up because they do own property and are working up here and they're spending money here. But again, that's just another complicated way.
That's right.
Data that we're not able to capture. And again,
Right.
I keep thinking about that too. If someone's W-2 is being issued, is that where their place of employment is, although they live somewhere else?
That's right. When I was in graduate school in Chicago back in 2004 and 2005, I worked with an economist who was working for a bank in downtown Evanston, which was where my school was, and he came to town 3 days a month. He spent 27 days out of the month in Ely. This was back in 2005, and back then he was telling me he's not the only one. He was living here and spending money and contributing to the economy, but his job number was counted in Evanston. And so yes, a lot of that it's not captured by this. We can capture some of that data in other ways, particularly if you start doing an analysis on your second homeowners who are here. One time I think we did an analysis of second homeowners for Ely. I remember I did it back in 2010 or 9. And so, yeah, like we can tell you a lot about your second homeowners if that's something that you want to discover more about. More questions? Yes.
We were discussing at this table the age gap in Ely and also how that impacts the cost of living, and wondering what the cost of living in Ely is compared to statewide and other rural areas, and how many working poor we have in Ely because of the cost of living.
Okay. I don't know the answer to that question, but we can mark it down. Aiden, can we capture some of those numbers through Alice in terms of, did you hear the question?
Yeah, we can definitely capture some of those numbers through Alice, I believe. I'm very confident we can. I can't give it 100%, but I think Alice would be a good measure because it does measure cost of living in regions and then measures what percentage of the working population is below that cost of living.
Can you tell these fine people what Alice means? It's not a woman who owns the coffee shop down the street. What is Alice here?
Alice is, okay, I'm trying to pull up so I don't mess it up. The Alice index.
Good question.
It doesn't really say what their, oh, it is asset limited income constrained employment.
There we go. That's why I couldn't remember it. Okay. We also had another question about how do we, for places like Ely, how do we account for, if we wanted to start thinking about measuring impact of part-time and seasonal employment, how do we do that? What's the best way to do that? If we wanted to keep track of seasonal employment, is that just something we would do individually with
Yeah, I would. There may be a few. I would need to explore the different data sources we have to like. I think Placer may be able to capture some of that. Um, I think that maybe Deed has some information on that, but I would have to explore a bit. I don't know off the top of my head how exactly I would capture it, but I have a few things that I would check out that I can check out to see how to measure that.
Well,
Okay.
Aiden, I think that would be interesting just because I'm one question I have, and that doesn't necessarily need to be answered here and now, but like, how do you capture full-time equivalent? Because I just think that that came up for me too. It was like, how are we talking about part-time employment and gig workers and things like that? And how likely are they to have been captured if they are putting together 40 hours a week on their own? Would they have been captured or would they have not been captured? And again, I don't necessarily expect that you have a clear, concise answer in this moment, but that would be important follow-up.
They would have been captured if they work 40 hours a week across multiple jobs. Um, they're it would have been split up across the industries they work,
Okay.
but it would be captured as that individual having a full-time equivalent employment.
And if they don't work 40 hours a week, then it wouldn't have been captured at all.
Well, it would have been captured as like 0.75.
Okay.
Abby and I had a number of ideas, so I'm going to run
You-
through our list.
Okay.
Real quickly, just topics.
Sure. Sounds great.
Okay. One was our agreement that the 4 townships should be included for both employment and income. There are about 20 resorts in the townships around town, and many of the proprietors who own businesses in town live in the townships. And so you miss a lot, including income. Second, we have an outstanding high quality small batch manufacturing gig going in Ely. And it would be great to highlight that and promote it. And it's, so if many people think of it as like one big manufacturer comes in, we have all these little micro ones that are fabulous. The other thing was capturing the seasonal, which we've talked about. Like Ian brings in these wonderful performers all summer and you pay them, right? And we're missing them. And that's part of our art scene. That's really important. Abby has a shop where she sells all this art made by technically high quality small batch manufacturers, right? And so trying to figure that thing out where that fits would be interesting. And then on the mining question, I have generally understood there are about 100 people roughly who commute to the taconite mines on the Mesabi Iron Range. But if we capture Ely income and township income, we should capture their contribution to our economy because they live here and file their tax returns.
They spend their wages here. That's right.
Hopefully.
Hopefully they spend their wages here. We had one more question from David, and then I'm going to ask that we move on because we're getting to the fun stuff here. This isn't even the fun stuff yet here, guys.
Well, it's not really a question, but, and not to pick on the data, John, but to pick on the data, you cut off at 2023. So I think there's significant upward trends that are observable from 23 to 25. A lot of it's done by, as we talked about earlier, the Center for Rural Policy, which most people in here have never heard of, but they do fantastic work here in Minnesota statistically. And what they show, among other things, is a very steep wage rise versus cost of living. So we're actually in a better place in greater Minnesota, and they slice and dice it by areas, including our area, and it shows very positive trends. The same goes for in-migration, that even though the mix of births and deaths has tended to shrink the population, what we're seeing is in-migration that actually increases our population and stabilizes it. So there's some really optimistic info out there where if you just looked at these charts that pick up the Great Recession, they can be a little bit
Good point. The other thing I want to think about, maybe this is more of a charge to you, is that we would love to enhance this report to reflect the concerns you have or the way that you would like an analysis to be done. The good thing is that Lacey and I and some other folks at the university have been talking about what makes sense for next steps for research that needs to be done for the Ely area. So we're going to be having some of those conversations. But if there's anyone in the room who is interested in like, hey, I'd like to see a report that maybe reflects more about what we're looking for, we can do that. But that takes just a little bit of coordination and effort on your end to help us. And so we did this report, long before we started having conversations about this relationship between Ely for Ely and the university. So yes, we want to be good partners. And again, we can look at data through any number of different ways. But the way, if we want to do that in a smart way, it's best to have a good relationship. And I think that's a big part of what we're looking on. I never mind people throwing darts at the data that I present because it's not perfect. And it's also not the most important thing, in my opinion.
So I just looked it up. In Q1 of 2024, the average weekly wage was $882. And then Q4 of 2025, the average weekly wage was $964. And so it has increased.
It has increased from
significantly.
Good question. Thanks. So did we have one more question back there? No, we'll move on. Thank you, Lacey. See, that's a problem with me. So we're going to get into moving on from census numbers and deed numbers, all these numbers about the overall economy. There's a whole bunch of tools out there that we use to gather data, and one of them is called Placer AI. It's really cool stuff. Aiden's going to explain what it is, but basically it's data. It's a database that we subscribe to that will tell you a whole bunch of information based on where people travel to and where they're coming from based on their cell phone. And so it's really good data, but it's not perfect, but it's very good. It's going to show patterns, not necessarily individuals. It's going to help us test assumptions. And the goal here is to raise questions. And so you're going to we've sort of run an analysis from a few different lenses here using this Placer data in Ely. We have an example of a local business that we're going to be sort of looking at and what their foot traffic or what their customers look like and where they're coming from. And then also with a couple of streets, we did an analysis of Sheridan Street and Chapman Street as well. So you don't have to memorize all this because it could look very different depending on what unit of analysis you wanted to look at, whether it was a business or a park or a different type of geographic location. We don't have data on every place. There are some places that are called sensitive places, such as schools and churches, where thank God they don't track some of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is sort of Big Brother. It creeps me out a little bit, but it's the data that's out there that the world is using, and so we thought we wanted to bring it to communities as well. So Aiden, I'm going to kick it off over to you here so I can go refill my coffee.
Sounds.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm
Great.
good to go. So as John mentioned, there are a few limitations on this data. So it relies on cell phone owners with their location services enabled. It is restricted to adults. Sensitive places include housing, so no apartments and no houses, no places of worship, and then anything owned by the school district. So it's not just schools themselves, but it's also the baseball field or the football field or the ice rink. If it's owned by the school district, then it is not measured. In low cellular service areas, accuracy can be an issue, so that is something to consider up in Ely, although in recent years, it has significantly improved, and I'm using 2025 data, so it should be somewhat accurate or fairly accurate. For the most reliable data, business or geography must be turned on in the database. For data involving people's homes, the location is plotted randomly within the zip code. So, the zip code that Ely is in is quite large, and so will not plot anyone's homes with any level of accuracy in the zip code. Um, so it's just plotted randomly within the zip code, and so I'm using data by zip code. So going on to the next slide. So the example is potluck kitchenware. So this is one of the tables that can be generated. And this again is for 2025 and people who spent more than 15 minutes in potluck kitchenware. So as you can see, there is like a little bump as would be expected starting in June through September. Like it goes down in August, but then there's some spikes in September as well as somewhat high more elevated in the beginning of the year levels of, and so this measures the number of visits by not employees um, in weekly aggregation. So in the next slide, so this is the common route. So as was mentioned earlier about like, well, we don't live in Ely proper, but we travel to Ely or we work in Ely. This shows the common routes to get to potluck kitchenware. And as you can see, it's a lot of along Highway 1, starting just to the west of Tower, and then from Babbitt, as well as to the east in the direction of Winton. And so there are people coming from all over this more, more regional scope area. And then next slide. So this is the origin of all visitors across the year. And as you can see, the most common place is Ely, but then it's Babbitt, Winton, and then surprisingly down in south of the Twin Cities, Farmington, and then west of the Twin Cities, Golden Valley. But as you can see, it also includes people coming from Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin. So it is the actual draw. Granted, these are in low numbers, but the actual draw is wide, but the core consumer base is fairly localized. So what might this mean? So again, elevated numbers of visitors starting in June. High 1 is the most common route, not only because of tourists, but also people who live in and north of the Iron Range. And then I misspelled Babbitt there. Whoops, that was not. Let's see if I can. Yeah. Well, Babbitt area is most common for
Worry about it,
customers.
Aiden.
And then visitors from other states, including Iowa and Nebraska. Then next slide, please. So this is for all of East Sheridan Street, or not all. It's west of the park. So from the I think Voyager Lumber to the park is kind of where I was measuring on Sheridan Street. Again, you can see starting in May, and then through like August and September, you see this bump with a big spike in late June, early July, right around. That spike is the 4th of July parade, most likely. Then so similar trends, similar seasonal trends. So next slide, please. Again, we see from this common route that it's Babbitt, or Highway 169 to 1, from Virginia, and then also to the east, on 18. So that's like the Winton area and even further east. Um, the origin of visitors. So this is individual visitors, not number of visits. So 6,000 visitors, individual visitors, not including children, um, from the Ely area. Then the next most common is Virginia, then Hibbing, then Hermantown by Duluth, and then it goes down to Ham Lake and Babbitt. Next slide, please.
Does that surprise anybody? A little bit? No. Some yes, some no. Okay.
So
Sorry, Aiden.
yeah, no worries. Again, elevated number of visitors in June. Highways 1 and 21 are the most common routes. While many visitors are tourists, they're not frequently from the Twin Cities. It's actually tourists from like Duluth, from Bemidji, from like some from the St. Cloud region, but also a lot from the Iron Range in general. So then looking at East Chapman, again, the spike is likely due to the 4th of July. But as you can see, East Chapman is there's way less of a seasonal pattern than Sheridan. So this may indicate it's more the businesses on Chapman are more focused towards local or year-round customers. The most common routes are Virginia down to Eveleth. So this is indicating more of this. This is like almost counterintuitive when compared to the last chart, because this kind of shows that maybe it's actually more tourists. Well, the last one said, well, there's probably fewer tourists. But then also frequently from Babbitt as well, and then Winton area. So this shows that it again shows it's not likely tourists, but is likely people traveling to Ely for other reasons, or they could be tourists, but mostly from the Iron Range, because it's Ely, Babbitt, Virginia, and Embarrass. And then Tower are the top 5 regions or towns that people come from to go to East Chapman. And again, these people are not driving through. I've limited they have to spend enough time on the street that they're not just driving through. So these are people who are actually like either walking down the street or visiting a business there. So again, elevated number of businesses starting in June, but less so than Sheridan. Again, highways 1, 169, 21 are the most common routes. Many visitors are tourists, but again, frequently not from the Twin Cities, and even more so, they're from the Iron Range. And then Ely, Babbitt, and Virginia are the most common home locations of visitors. So sending it back.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Aiden. We've got a question
Okay.
here.
If you could hand them the mic, I can't hear.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how the placer data is collected?
Sure. So the placer data, when you are using a cell network or have location services turned on, the cell network will ping your location and it'll send it to your cell phone service. Placer buys all this cell data for people who are adults, and then it compiles the location data into a database to show uh like these location trends. So it is, as John said, big brothery, but uh large corporations use this type of data all the time, and so we at the University of Minnesota are trying to put give some of the power back to the people who actually owns the cell phones and get the power back into the hands of the common person.
That, the Zups comment, so go ahead.
I just wanted to make a quick comment that if this data cuts off at the park, which I think you said at the beginning, you've missed Zups, and that's a big draw.
Yeah, I was intentionally avoiding Zups, partially because I think that is deserving of its own individual analysis, but also because I wanted to show that this other part, excluding Zups, still has draw within itself.
Thank you. Another question.
I'll bring the mic over, Kelsey.
One sec, Aiden.
Thanks. So my question, Aiden and John, is about how to understand the placer data in the context of the seasonal residency that we see in town. So for myself, I'm wondering if I have, and I just had them in the shop this last week, seasonal residents who spend the winter in San Diego and then are here for 5 months at their cabin just outside of Ely. In the context of placer, when they come into town to visit my shop, visit Sheridan Street, are they being tracked as originating in Ely or in the Ely area, or would they show up as visitors from San Diego?
They are unlike other data sources, Placer actually will change the home location of an individual if they're in a location for longer than a month and a half, I believe. It might be 2 months. And so they will be considered in the Ely area because it will show that they have changed their home location for the summer.
I am so glad that you are here, Aiden. There's a lot of good questions that I need some assistance with. Question? One sec, Aiden.
I'm bringing the mic to you, Riley.
We're getting the mic over there.
Just from my curiosity standpoint, when you get outside of local, like you get outside of St. Louis County, do you see a bias for where they come from based on zip codes that cover a larger surface area? Because even if you have a high population density, if it's a small zip code, it's gonna have a smaller sample size when you start looking at outside of our county, when you're looking at where people come from. You see a bias in that sometimes?
Yes, there is a little bit of bias, and so because the total number of visitors, and I can pull this up right now, but the total number of visitors still is fairly there's a slight bias, I should say. I can like compile it by different things other than zip code, but and it will show that there is more from like St. Paul, Minneapolis, Eagan, Edina areas, but it will still also significantly show people coming from the Iron Range. Because from my off the top of my head, I don't believe there's more than 12,000 I think there's some locations with like 12,000 individual visitors. And so when you show that, like, for example, what is on the screen right now, what is that? That is like 8,000-ish, 7,500-ish visitors from these top 3 locations. That is still more than half of the overall total visitors. And so there is some bias when looking at larger zip codes, but that bias doesn't entirely eliminate the top 3 on these lists.
Becky.
So one thing that confuses me, and it may be that I just don't understand how this program works. Our canoe trip outfitters have visitors from all 50 states and from around the world. Where are they on this list?
Well, it cuts off at 77 because it doesn't want to get lower than that, or else you could like specifically identify where like the zip codes people live in. And so it cuts off the even less dense population of like 1 or 2 people from a certain state because it doesn't want to be expose people's zip codes.
Okay, another question. One thing I'll say while we're walking the mic back is the reason why I wanted you guys to see this and is we weren't going to be able to answer all the questions that Ely has that you can by using this tool just through these 3 different lenses of East Chapman, Sheridan, and Potluck Kitchenware. What I want you to do is sort of wanted to see how the tool works and what are some of the kinds of questions that you can ask it? What are the questions that you can ask it that are going to be useful to you and to be useful for business owners? And so anyway, there's a lot more that we can do. One more or another question here, Aiden.
I think this can be quick. I'm just curious how quickly it works. Like you have it set at 15 minutes. Can it be at 3 minutes or something? Like I went to 3 different businesses on East Chapman Street and bought 3 different things, but was in each one for less than 10 minutes for sure.
Yes, it can be. The reason I set it at 15 minutes was because I didn't want to have people driving through. Like I wanted to eliminate the people who are driving through. But yes, for individual businesses, I can set it to any visit duration or 5-minute visit duration, or I can set it lower.
One thing that I'm more than happy to do after we're done with this workshop here today is I can fire up my laptop if anyone wants to see how the tool works, and we could run a query or 2, which may help, and so you can kind of see what are some of the parameters that you can set on this. Yeah, you can set it for 5 minutes, you can set it for 15 minutes, you can find out how many people were here for an hour or longer. It really all depends on what you want to know and yeah, and how it's going to be useful.
And I just looked at East Sheridan Street by county, visit number of individual visitors by county, and St. Louis County had about 37,000 visitors from St. Louis County, which is 17%, and then it's Hennepin, Ramsey, Dakota, Anoka, Washington, and so those are all the Twin Cities, but then it's Lake and Itasca, with about 3,500 from both Lake and Itasca.
Again, when we start thinking about what the next steps here are for research, we're going to be looking for folks to help get involved with helping guide that research, because again, the best way for us to do an analysis is based off of feedback or prompts that we get from you all. Did we have another question?
I was just gonna make a comment. Like, I mean, I think so, Aiden. What I'm hearing you say is this like origin of visitor information will be limited by a certain it requires a density to get information. But if we go back a few slides and we're just looking at the graph of like the number of people on East Sheridan Street versus the number of people on East Chapman Street, this doesn't have those limitations, right? Those are aggregate numbers. And so, Becky, to your comment, I think this information these graphs are interesting because it's like, well, yeah, how do we get more people who are having outdoor recreation experiences to come into downtown. And we see the number is higher on Sheridan Street than it is on Chapman Street. So we have a really clear call to action, which is to get more people to go to Chapman Street if we want that, right? And so how can we, could we do this same presentation 2 years from now after a strategic effort to have people who are doing recreation experiences outside of the downtown core of Ely, getting them to come into the downtown core of Ely, and could we show growth over time as a result of a specific effort to get more commerce in downtown? And that, I think, is one of the things I see when I'm looking at this tool and hoping we can use that information to say, yes, we need to get more action on Chapman Street. And yes, we could grow commerce in downtown in general. Because we know, like at the Ely for Ely workshop, there was a Placer AI component where we saw that the Ely area had 326,000 visitors last year. And so if we add up all the people who are in downtown Sheridan Street, that kind of between Voyager Lumber and Whiteside Park, if that doesn't add up to 326,000, then that's a gap that we can target to try to get more people to come into town.
It adds up to 222,000.
100,000 people. Let's do it.
The other ways that you can use this, the Placer software, is you might think about doing it over a weekend, or maybe there's a festival in town where you wanted to kind of get a baseline and find out where people are coming from for a festival, and you could kind of run an analysis year after year to find out how that's changing, and maybe good ways or not so good ways. Yes. Hold on one sec.
Another way to use it, as you were putting up the slide with the kind of overview of what this information says, is if you are a store on Chapman and you have it in your budget that you want to put what's it called, billboard up, you can look at where people are coming and strategically figure out where that billboard should be placed. So like this information is really actionable.
That's right. There used to be, when I first started, there was a lot of thought that, or I was hearing a lot of comments from people that most of Ely's tourists and seasonal residents were coming from the Chicago metro area, which I never thought was correct. And all I did was just sort of have to show them based on zip codes and home location that was not true. And so that might change your marketing. Like you may not want to be marketing as much in the Chicago market if not as many of your customers are coming from there as they thought they were. You might want to. There you go.
But also, wouldn't it complicate? I mean, not to make it all so complicated, but if this tool is smart enough to know that someone has a second home, and if a lot of our second homeowners come from the Chicago area, then they wouldn't be aggregated as coming from Chicago because they would be relocated to having lived here.
Through this data.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Question over here.
Am I mathing correctly? If I look at the percentages, 60% of visitors to East Chapman in the range are 1% or less.
Yes. Again, this is a artifact of me using zip codes because, for example, when you're looking at the Twin Cities, a single zip code could be 2 city blocks. So it is an artifact of me using zip codes, but when you look at counties, it is very much not that. It is, but yes, in this situation, because of the fact that I'm using zip codes, a lot of them are less than 1% because there's just not a lot of geographic area.
Isn't Aiden the best, guys?
Thank you, Aiden.
Well, actually, with that, I was just, can we give Aiden a quick round of applause here for, he just,
Thank you.
Aiden's great. Aiden, you're sort of, well, you should stick around if you want, but we're going to move into our small discussion here. And again, you can do this at your tables and just answer some questions. We'll take about 10 minutes. What visitor or movement patterns surprised you the most? What does the data suggest about how people actually experience or use Ely? Where do you see an opportunity for stronger connections between businesses, organizations, or other parts of town? And what is one question Ely should explore further, or one action Ely should consider taking next? You don't have to answer all of these questions, but if you wanted to focus on one or two, again, the point of this is we want to hear what's interesting and what's not interesting, but really we want to find out what kind of data would be useful for you to have to move forward with whatever kinds of decisions you want to make. So feel free to break up in your tables here, or if you want to join with the table behind you in a little bit of a larger group, that's just fine. And we'll reconvene in about 10. Pretty good. Thanks for coming back together. It looks like there was a lot of great discussion. And we don't have a whole lot of time here, but I wanted to find out, this is being recorded, and so anything you tell us is we're going to have captured, and it knows that it's going to be important for something for us to work on. So let's just do a little bit of report out about whatever you guys talked about. If it was one of these questions or something completely different, that's just fine too. But I'd like to kind of do some takeaway thoughts here.
One thing that we talked about was it will be really important to get this data similar to how you got the data for potluck, but like in the hands of individual organizations and business owners, like specific to them. And then we also talked how it's interesting to know and like would be helpful to segment how the data was coming forward. Did people come from 169 or up Highway 1, right? So you market to the North Shore, you market in the Quad Cities area to get people here. And really it could lead to more collaboration and more marketing for our local businesses.
That's a good charge for us to think about and do. Thank you. Love it.
We talked about the amount of people that come up and they are at the like outfitters or places like that, and they go to Zups, and that's the extent of how deep into Ely they get. And just talked about ways that we could get, in addition to the summer times, are there ways that businesses that are on Sheridan and Chapman can help put together some sort of like welcome packet of like what is there to do if it's raining or whatever, like come in and see a movie and come to like the various things that are happening in town. And yeah, just thinking about different ways, like it doesn't have to be elaborate, but could be good. And also if we could get those places to even just have like a little like shop local sign and maybe like a ask me what there is to do in town, to just kind of prompt those conversations as well.
It's exactly the kind of actions that I would love to see come from these conversations. So great ideas.
We were very much kind of on the same page, kind of interested in the data of, so we have the data of who stops. We're curious about what data there is about who passes through, who only stops at Zups, and see if we can compare and find ways to, shift the scale a little bit towards sticking around. We also talked a little bit about how do we get people to stop, and then once they stop, how do we reorient them? So what we talked about was like a wayfinding system, which is a fancy way of like, how can we post maps? How can we post cool signposts? Madden had a good idea to play into the Boundary Waters, like how many rods to flower and seed from where you're standing? That kind of thing.
Another interesting thing that we didn't really show here today is that if you were to look at this from an individual business, whether it was Potluck Kitchenware or Paragus Outfitters or the Grand Ely Lodge or what have you, it'll show you like who's from people who made that visit, it'll tell you where they were before they went there and where they went after they left. And so, and there's all sorts of like questions like that that this data can answer. But as an individual business owner, you might want to know, like, where are my customers coming from before they get here and after they leave. And
well, and then
get
if
some-
you had that information, you could formalize a relationship, right?
That's
like,
right.
oh, I noticed that people are coming from Boundary Waters Kitchen and Market and going to Potluck Kitchenware or Five Pines. Like, what does that?
That's right. You
Take
can
off
say,
the
hey,
phone.
look, people are like, we already have a relationship. And now we know that we have a closer relationship than we did before. And so, yes, all types of possibilities for cooperative marketing and so forth. Good questions. Any other comments? Yes.
Well, I'm kind of curious, since you're using some cell phone data as where people are physically located, are people also, when they're on their phone, are they using their phone as a search tool to find out what's available in the community? And is there a way to look at that to see whether people are even doing that? And if so, what are they looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, Aiden, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that's not the kind of question that we can get with this mobile data. There are, I think, what they call SEO, search engine optimization folks that might be able to tell you that. What do you got for me, Aiden?
Yeah, all we have is location data. We have nothing else. And then we have a little bit of the demographic data, but that is based off of the ownership of the phone.
Yeah, somebody local who knows a lot about SEO. That's kind of a big thing. They might be helpful in answering that question.
Sure. I usually don't need a mic. I'm pretty boisterous.
It's for Aiden.
Yes, Aiden, thank you very much. I've been following remotely on multiple devices as I'm running around from meeting to meeting. To follow up on the search engine optimization and query, yes, all that data is available. Question for Aiden. Aiden, is there an API available so that I could tap into that and then merge that and mesh that with SEO data?
You're on mute, Aiden.
I will have to look into that. I don't know if there's an API available. I always go to the website, so I'll have to see what I can dig up.
Okay, hold on one sec. Another question?
Just our question is what Ely can do is between the North Shore and us, how can we get people from the North Shore to come over here? Because most people think of Ely as camping and hiking, and over that way is a little more, shopping. What can we do as Ely people to get them to come this way?
So you're talking about tourists? How to
Yes.
get more tourists from the North Shore to, well, I won't tell them you asked, how to do that. Yeah, I mean, we can run this same data for Grand Marais and Cook County as well. And I never have, so I don't know how those patterns might look differently. If they might be coming from completely different zip codes. The profile of a North Shore tourist might be very different from the profile of an Ely area tourist. But just by looking at what those differences are, you might find out, wait, what are the reasons why people choose the North Shore over more the inland lakes area such as Ely. But yeah, we can think about that.
We'll do a final question/comment here before we wrap up.
Thank you.
Well, that was actually one of the things our group was talking about, is how Ely actually needs to diversify its marketing and broader target. The Iron Range, you're looking for more lateral involvement across things, so they grow their experience, where you need to market differently to the Twin Cities to get a newcomer to come here. And I think Ely has been a very one-note marketing town, and its biggest step forward would be realizing that it needs to operate on a large-scale marketing platform that is broader and more diverse.
So you think
Segmentation, anyone?
Whoa. Segmentation. That's that's right. I mean, target marketing is its own thing. I mean, you may have an effort of reaching people who aren't coming yet. At the same time, like if you're a local business owner, you might want to market more in the Hermantown zip code because it was number 3 or 4 on the list. And my guess is there's probably not a whole lot of marketing that's done in the Hermantown area because, you know, you might imagine that your customers are much broader than that. But yeah, you know, depending on the type of business, that might alter your approach.
I just want to acknowledge that we're kind of at time here. and
Hey,
it's
all
been-
right.
I mean, it's been such a robust, there's been so much information and so much opportunity for engagement, and the conversation will continue. So the third meeting on this business track will happen on Fact Check Me June 9th, Tuesday. It's the second Tuesday of June. I can't believe next month is June. So the conversation will continue. There's always more to say, and we need to integrate this information. So we did record this session. I look forward to following up with the recording and a link to the report that was the basis of the information from, I think, a 2024 economic report commissioned by the chamber.
Thank you very much. This was really fun for me to see so many folks showing up so early. I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but it makes my job a lot more fun. And yeah, this is great. Again, you really all should be proud of yourselves that so many people showed up, and really happy to see that. In terms of this report, yes, you can think of this report as a preliminary report because we will enhance it. And we will add on and we can update it to something that might make more sense to you. We want to help you answer some of those questions that are really might be specific to Ely that the town next door might not have. And so I really appreciate it.